have a question. What is your favorite song and how do you connect with it? Is it when you fell in love or through something really difficult? I'm your host, Tiffany Mason. Now join me as I interview others and we take a walk down memory lane with them. Let's get lost in why that music matters to them. Turn up your radio and let's explore Memories with a Beat. Hello, Podcast Land. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Memories with a Beat. And today I have a very special guest with me. His name is Peter Pessetto. And the reason why he's special to me is he is a business coach. And I am so excited, just all of the opportunity and all of the things Peter has to teach me. Peter, welcome to my podcast. Introduce yourself a little bit for my guests. Where are you? What are you doing besides business coach? And then you can even talk a little bit about being a business coach if you'd like.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. I'm super excited to be here, and I love, the whole concept around this, the memory with a beat. I mean, you and I started talking on the phone, and I almost
I
like
know.
launched into the podcast interview because I was just so excited to talk about it. Um, I always start
Yep.
out with I'm a dad. I'm a single dad. I'm a dad 100% of the time, 50% of the time. My son's mom and I chose when he was about 2 to live separately, and I asked for three things in divorce. I asked for the KitchenAid mixer because I'm Italian and I like to cook. I asked for the memory foam mattress because I'm a guy and I like to sleep. And I asked for 50% of my son's time, no more, no less. And I'm super grateful. I've got a great working relationship with his mom. I feel like we co-parent extremely well, and we're just in a great place. He's 7. I'm also a public speaker. I've got several thousand hours of. I'm one of those few people that actually love standing in front of people and talking. I'm an author. I wrote a book called Active Choices. I'm actually working on my second book right now. And I've been a coach since 2013, and then on my own since about 2018, because I felt like it gave me. I was with Keller Williams, and I'm extremely grateful to that company. They taught me a ton. I worked with corporate. I got to be one of 25 people out of a company of 150,000 that did what I did. And then, as my son was getting older, he was starting to ask, "When's daddy coming home?" And I realized there's no way to answer that question. And so at that point, I made the active choice to get off the road and be a present father and create a more consistent schedule for him. Um, at that point,
Yeah.
you figure out the money, you figure out what you want to do. So I open my own shop and I get to coach small business entrepreneurs, people that are in sales, leadership, team building. A lot of fun, a lot of fun.
And me.
My Yes, and you. And my big thing is, and one of the reasons I was so excited to work with you is, I see people working a ton, and working harder is such a trap.
Mm-hmm.
We're brought up to believe that the more we work, the better. And it's in, yeah, no, it's
Mm-hmm.
that keeps us from working as efficiently as we possibly can. And a question I like to ask people is, hey, if I only gave you your phone tomorrow for 4 hours, what would you do differently?
Mm.
And people start understanding it's not about time management, it's about priority management. So I've done it over and over where I will cut somebody's hours from 25 to 50% less that they're
Yeah.
working and double or triple their income,
Mm-hmm.
and that to me is incredibly rewarding.
Well, I love that you bring up, working harder is a trap. The podcast that I listened to that really launched me into what I'm doing now, a lot of people in that community always say it's not a bragging right. Like just because you worked harder, just because you worked 16 hours, don't let that be a bragging right. Don't be a slave to the clock. So I love that you bring that up.
Right.
I also love you saying that you are 100% of a dad 50% of the time, and answering that question, when is dad coming home? My husband has always worked long hours, and partially uh, not by choice. So I appreciate the question, and I really appreciate it. Hit home to me when you said there's no answer for that. And you and I have never talked about that before, but yeah, it's a hard question to answer, and it's hard to look into their little face and be like, you know what, he's working hard for our family and he'll be home just as soon as he can, but it did also afford me the opportunity to be home with them. So there was a trade-off there, but I appreciate that thought process. And I think it's interesting too that you got your training from Keller Williams, because I know a couple of people in the Keller Williams world as well. And I know you mentioned that they get awards for being, one of the top performing teaching companies. And I have seen that on my own outside of knowing you. So I think that that's really interesting that you got this amazing training. You were able to help people in your industry. And then when you needed to, kind of switch modes and say, what does this new season of life look like? You were able to apply that and really just continue doing what you were doing, just in a different mode or a
Yep.
different, fashion with different businesses.
100%. When I was with them, and in their corporate office, they had been awarded the number one training and education company in America in all industries.
Mm,
And they had companies like Zappos and Starbucks coming to them to learn how they did what they did. And they put a ton of, training into their, if they're going to be the best at training and coaching, then they got to have the best trainers and coaches.
sure.
And I was always, always, always in a constant state of learning.
Yeah.
And people would come into the company and they're just like, oh my goodness, this education. And I mean, I've had friends that were general contractors, insurance company, financial planners who, I've shared the stuff that I've learned and they've gone out. It works in their business as well.
Right. Applicable across the board.
And so to have gotten to be there kind of in this golden age was
Mhm.
pretty incredible. And to be able to give that to other people. I've still to this day I have, 1,000 plus people who will call me coach. And I wear that badge with honor. To me, a coach is, it's a big deal to me. I've worked hard to be a coach and be the best coach that I can.
Yeah. Yeah. It shows for sure. I know that you wrote a book, and it's called Active Choices, right?
Yep.
Okay. And in that book, I know that you have said that that first chapter, Choose You, has like almost taken off on its own. It's become a life and an entity of it in and of itself. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, or what kind of choices are you talking about, or how is the Choose You? Why is it spinning off and taking off on its own?
Sure. I'll give you an example. There was a lady that was coaching with me, and she had heard about my book, and she went out and bought it, and she immediately skipped over the first chapter. Choose You. She's like, it's literally chapter number one, and she laughs about it now. And she's been a wonderful sort of role model for it. Um, she's like, "Oh, well, that doesn't really apply to me because I already take care of myself." And she said she read most of the rest of the book, and I kept referring back to Choose You. So she finally went back and read it. And when a lot of people hear about it, they think it's selfish, to take
Sure.
the time for you.
Well, I would think
And
too. Do they feel is it uncomfortable for people?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's 100% because so many of us, right? We grew up with a parent that's oftentimes a mom that did everything for everyone else and
Hmm.
always came last,
Hmm.
and maybe birthday, Christmas, and Mother's Day, they got to go first.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at a mom right now in this on this screen who probably has experienced something around that, you know,
Maybe, just maybe.
just maybe.
Listen, in just a minute, you're going to want to text the word details to the number I give you. So quick, go grab a pen. I'll wait. Okay, write down 904-560-5597 and the word details. Now, here's why you're going to want to text it. If you're an entrepreneur like me, I know that you have a lot of hats that you have to wear. But guess what? I have really good news. I've just found a system. I call it the No More system. Why do I call it that? Well, no more wondering if someone looked at your proposal, no more worrying about checking messages on multiple platforms, no longer having to check back with a prospect and see if they need to reschedule, no more worrying about the prospects that ghosted you. There's an automation for that. There are tags and segmentations that will update a contact's record when they say open an email or whatever. It's amazing. No more worrying about updating your pipeline. No more, I've got to make sure to send this person information. No more to a lot of things. So I call it the No More system, even though the actual name is Follow Up Speed. Follow Up Speed is a CRM, an automated follow-up team. You can run a promotion, a course, a membership. It can even be your website, all rolled into one quote-unquote hub, if you will. It's seemingly endless, all of the different pipelines clients can go through with Follow Up Speed. Best part, it's at their speed. I just want to share one more thing, which is my favorite current automation. If a client or listener texts one of my keywords, sure, I can have an automation in place, or I can reply as myself. And that's who they've invested in, correct? Us, the business owner. I hope you can see your day-to-day being simplified and your business growing as a result. Check out Follow Up Speed now by texting details to 904-560-5597. And of course, it'll be in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
I start off with there's an amazing poem, or however you want to call it, passage, probably is the better way to put it, by Marianne Williamson. And it talks about our greatest fear. And she says, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most scares us. She says, who am I to be brave, courageous, talented? She says, who are you not to be? And my favorite line in there is, your playing small does not serve the world. And I again and again and again,
Amen.
especially in sales, I see people spend their health to build their wealth. They spend their relationships to build their wealth. And they don't put what I refer to as positive residual energy into themselves. I have so many moms that will say, I would do anything for my kids. I'm like, okay, well, would you eat better? Would you take the time to go work out? And, in my own life, having my son 50% of the time, I felt like, well, if I was taking the time on one of the days that he was with me to go work out, I was taking time away from him.
Right.
And then, there was a time I went and worked out, and I brought him with me, and I realized it wasn't just important that I was taking care of myself to be the best dad I can when I'm with him. It was important to model that to him, that I show him through my actions the importance of taking care of myself, to be my best for other people. We've got to take the time to put positive residual energy, and it looks different for everyone. For some people, it might just be a 10 or 15 meditation in the morning. Some people, it's a workout. Some people, it's meal prep. Some people, it's turning off the TV at 9:30 at night and going to bed a little bit earlier. And whatever that is for you, is choosing that for you, doing that for you. And then it just kind of developed into this bigger and bigger thing. And now so many people follow me, and they're hashtagging choose you. And, we have these amazing calls once a week where we talk about how to choose yourself better. And one of the steps that I brought in to help people make this a habit very quickly, because education without implementation is just entertainment.
I remember you saying that to me, and so I've been working this week on implementing some things that we had spoke about, and I'm like, oh, hey, Tiffany, was it educate or was it entertainment, or did you do something with it? So I love that you just brought that back up again. And I
Yes.
think, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just, we have so much information. You can go online and spend the next year just learning how to play the guitar, how to do this, how to do that, watching YouTube videos, and yet, what are you doing with it?
Yeah, yeah.
And so in my coaching, what I'm always looking to do is not just teach you something, as you already know. My goal is to help you make that a habit, because when it becomes a habit, it becomes part of your life.
Absolutely. Well, I think that goes with one of my cornerstone quotes that I like to say is that action brings clarity. So when you have that education and then you start to implement it, you go, okay, yeah, this does work for me. Okay, yeah. And so you get that clarity that, yeah, I want to keep doing this. Yes, this podcast is worth my time, or yes, this journaling is worth my time, or whatever. If you don't practice it, if you don't try it, if you don't do it, you don't know if that's effective or not. And then, like you said, that education just becomes entertainment,
Right.
right?
And there's a lot of entertainment out there right now.
Yeah, there is.
So the step that I brought in that really helped people groove this habit in a tremendous way, and I don't ever teach anything that I'm like, well, let's see if this is going to work on people. It's not the what I refer to as throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what
Right.
sticks. It's the step of gratitude and teaching people to say thank you to themselves. And there's all sorts of psychology around the importance of this, but to demonstrate gratitude consciously to themselves.
Mm,
I saw people build habits at a rate that was faster than anything else I'd ever seen. And when they started,
wow.
you want to make sure the house is clean before you go to bed because that's your active choice. So you wake up to this clean house.
Yeah.
Well, when you clean the house and you wake up the next morning and you look at your house clean and you smile, say thank you out loud to yourself.
Yeah.
And it starts becoming this amazing habit. And as people grow, everything else gets better. There's nothing in your life that you're not going to touch. So automatically, as you become a better version of you, it just permeates all these other things.
Yeah. Well, I like that you're encouraging people to say thank you, because I have girlfriends that will be like, "Oh my gosh, I did this and it was so amazing. Like, I probably shouldn't say that." I'm like, "Yes, you absolutely should say that. Give yourself some credit."
Own
Like,
it.
right? If nobody else is going to pat you on the back, pat yourself on the back, because, it took effort and whatever time and energy to do it. And hey, it's okay to say you did a good job. You can be humble in saying, you know,
Yep.
I say you don't even have to be humble. Just say, like, I'm kind of the shit that I just did that. But, you know.
Well, I think that in general, and this is very general, we have there's so much information out there. There's always an area of my life that I can compare my life to somebody else's and come up short. Right?
Yes.
I can always do that. I
Mhm.
have less money than somebody else. I don't look as good as somebody else. I'm not as fit as somebody else. I'm not, I don't live in as big a house as somebody else. And so we have all these things that sort of drive our confidence down.
Mm.
And lack of confidence is a major challenge for a lot of people. And so when we see other people demonstrating confidence in something, we like it, and yet we're like, I don't know, you're getting a little cocky. And it's like, just allow somebody to be who they are. Allow them to be confident. Allow them to be comfortable in their own skin.
Yep.
And we should celebrate people more that way.
Yep. I agree. Absolutely. Well, I am very excited to just continue to learn from you and be encouraged and just see exponential growth with virtually you. But right now, let's make an active choice to talk about the
All right.
song that you chose. So if you would share with my audience what song you chose, and then you can go ahead and go into, why you connect with that or where you're instantly transported to.
So the song is Band on the Run,
Woohoo!
which is by Wings, which includes Paul McCartney. And it was right after he left the Beatles, about 3 years after the Beatles broke up. And so a lot of people still think it is the Beatles because it's Paul McCartney, and it is actually Wings.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. I didn't know about this Wings business. And so when I
Yes.
put it in, I was like, that can't be right. Paul McCartney. I'm like, I don't think that's right. So I kept like searching, and then I was like, let me listen to a little bit. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's the song. Okay. Paul McCartney and Wings. Okay.
So it comes after a time of my life, ironically, that was sort of my first choose you period of my life. I'd gone through
Mm,
this really big challenge. And then I basically kind of got away from everyone and everything for a summer. I moved to Lake George, New York, which you're familiar with.
yes. So beautiful.
I waited tables at this amazing restaurant called the Algonquin Restaurant, which I think is a different name now. Um, and I just was away from everyone, and I call it kind of my Thoreau summer, where I spent a lot of time by myself. And I
Mm,
just did things for myself. I went hikes for myself. I went and explored. I would go for long drives. I'd get a cup of coffee. And I really came back. one of the best versions of me that I'd ever been, probably the best version of me I'd ever been to that point. And a buddy of mine owned a coffee shop in Albany.
Mm-hmm.
I had already worked for him. I knew him pretty well, and I called him up. I'm driving back down the Northway, and I call him, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, I need a job." He's like, "I need a manager." I was like, "What time do you want me there?" He goes, "Stop in around 2 o'clock on Tuesday," and that was the job interview. And um, one of the things, so it was my senior year of college. I had taken a couple of years off. I lived in Europe, and so I was a little bit older. I already had some job experience. I was my last year, and I was only taking a couple classes. I think I had like 4 classes a semester, and I would work there. I'd open Saturday morning and Sunday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I would go in around 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And on Sundays, there was a station that we would play that was an hour with the Beatles. And Band on the Run used to
Beautiful.
come in a lot. And that time in the morning when the coffee shop's open, I'm in a great mood because I've got, a full caffeine bar, available to me. People come in at 7:15. I'm like, "Hey, how are you? What's going on?" Because I've already had my coffee. Um,
All
but
amped up.
but I just remember that time as such a great time in my life. And so that's where it transports me to. The song grabs you right from the very beginning. You hear those first notes of the guitar and you're like, there's no mistaking what song it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost comes across as like 2 or 3 songs
Yes.
because the song transitions during it. And it starts off one way and then it goes another. And then it goes from like this almost lullaby to a love song to like a rock song.
Yeah, I would agree. In the beginning, I thought it had a feel to me, maybe a little confused or melancholy, like Bohemian Rhapsody when he's like, "Mama,
Right. Yep.
you." Anyways, it made me, similar to that. And then I was like, again, I'm like, this I never heard the beginning of the song, I guess, or I never paid attention, right? Because they say Band on the Run a lot and it's feel good and it's easy sing along and right. So your brain cues in when that part comes in. But the beginning of it, I was like, oh, I never heard this before. So again, I'm like, I don't think this is the right song. So I had to fast forward a little bit. So yeah, that was interesting. But I would agree that okay, what are the words? Let's see here. If I ever get out of here. Oh yeah, that is it. So he does the part right, and then the guitar comes in, he's if I ever get out of here. It's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
Pulls
that
you
part
in.
right there. You're like, oh, and then it
Here we
gets a little
go.
faster and a little faster.
Yeah.
And you're like, yes.
Yes. When you were like, "This is on my workout playlist," I was like, "Okay." Wait, was it your workout playlist or just a playlist?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's on my
So,
workout playlist.
yeah, so I was like, "Okay." So when it starts, right, and it's like slow and like I said, kind of that melancholy, almost confused kind of feeling. And then the if I ever get out of here, I can see myself on the road running or I can see myself on the treadmill, especially in New York, I can see it.
Yes, yep, and I have to be careful of listening to that on the treadmill because I wanna speed up, and all of a sudden, by the end of the song, I'm,
Yeah.
stuck in wind.
Yeah, I thought it was a great song. I have recently honed in how many Beatles songs I absolutely love. Thanks to the podcast, I've interviewed some other people, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew Elton John spun off into his own thing, but I didn't realize that Paul McCartney had done so much on his own as well. So that's been an interesting discovery for me and
Yeah.
giving me like so much appreciation for just the band in general because it really proves how talented each individual was.
So,
And then
have you ever heard the story about them being in Germany?
no,
There's a great author that I love to read. His name is Malcolm Gladwell. There's 3 books that
heard
I
of him.
always recommend, and since you're my client, I will recommend them on the podcast to you.
Okay.
Outliers,
Okay.
Blink, and Tipping Point.
Okay, and side note, listeners, I will put these in the show notes. There will be links. All you have to do is click, and it'll take you right to the book, and you guys can check it out. Please continue.
Absolutely, and all 3 are amazing books that I have clients listen to, and Blink is about the science behind your gut reaction. It's incredible. And
Mm,
Outliers, one of the things that he talks about in Outliers is the concept of mastery. And by multiple different experts in different industries, they use the number 10,000. So 10,000 hours of doing something brings mastery,
Mhm.
which, to put that in perspective, that's a 40-hour work week for 50 weeks a year for 5 years. That's what doing something right
Whoa.
is gets you mastery, right? Like, so a lot of people don't have the public speaking experience I do, and they might look at me and say that's something he's mastered. I probably only have between 2 and 3,000 hours of public speaking
Sure.
experience. So I don't ever, and that's something I'll continue to study because I'm passionate about it. Um, it's not something that I would say that I've mastered yet. Well, these guys early on, they went to Germany and they used to play. I mean, think about this. If you've been to a concert and you know how long a typical rock concert is in the United States, or any concert is, it's typically 2 to 3 hours.
Yep.
They would play 8-hour sets 5 nights a week.
Whoa.
And so they would run out of songs, and so they just would have to, like, make stuff up and do different genres just to fill the time, and
Yeah.
they were basically playing every night 8 hours, 4 to 5 nights a week, and they came back from that, and they said that was where they felt like they truly mastered their instruments and their voice and
Wow.
their melodies and the writing and all that, because they
Wow.
had to.
Yeah. 8
And
hour set. Can you imagine going and attending an 8-hour concert? No way.
no way. But they were playing bars, and they would go on at 6 o'clock at night, and they would play until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's so much energy. I mean, they didn't have to choose anything, right? They didn't have to choose to work out. They didn't have to
right.
choose to eat right. They were expending so much energy.
Well, honestly, at that point, you do. I mean, think about, going back to the choose you. So let's say that those guys are partying and they're not taking care of their bodies and they're out doing whatever. Think about what happens,
Because it was the
right?
70s. I guess it was the 60s.
Yeah, this was 60s, early 60s, because it was
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
they'd come back to even England, before they got discovered and came to the US. So it's before,
Okay.
right? Before the British invasion even. Um, they if they're not taking care of themselves and getting their sleep and getting their rest and resting their voices and doing stuff, they run themselves down. They're not able to perform. They never become the Beatles. We never get all that music to enjoy. And that's what I talk
Mm,
about. Your playing small does not serve the world. They had to take care
yeah.
of themselves to some extent to be able to play 8 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And that
Wow.
phrase active choices came from, I heard just about every motivational speaker, big time entrepreneur you've ever heard of use a phrase around, and I've heard interviews with the Beatles where they basically said it. They're like, we decided to, and we dot dot dot. And to me, an
Mhm.
active choice is a choice that you bring energy to. Like, I can walk around my house all day long and talk about losing weight. Until I get my fat ass to the gym, it doesn't happen.
Right?
Right? Until I bring energy to the decision, until I made the active choice, then I begin to see results. And
Yeah.
we see results in relation to the amount of energy that we bring to our decisions.
Yeah.
And they could have quit. I mean, they could have not taken care of themselves, but they brought energy to that decision of, hey, well, we're going to play 8 hours. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a long set. But I suppose, I mean, I don't know. I don't suppose. I mean, there are people that play live in like our restaurants and our bars and stuff, but they don't play 8 hours.
No.
So, yeah, that's crazy. That's a whole day.
Yeah, so they learned all sorts of different types of music, and they learned all types of different types and they take songs and rewrite them just to fill the time,
Yeah.
and then practice at them until they got good.
Wow. That brings just that much more appreciation for the Beatles.
By the way, complete aside, I just watched on Prime Video
Mhm.
the whole story of the Bee Gees.
Okay.
Okay, the history of the Bee Gees.
Yep.
I'm not a huge Bee Gee fan. Obviously, you can't not know some Bee
Right.
Gees songs.
Yeah.
I was fascinated, and I was sad when it ended, and I was ready to go watch it again. So
Oh,
if and I'm not a huge Bee Gees fan, it was completely fascinating. I learned so much. If you're and I don't even do like where were they or the story. I'm not a big music person.
yeah. Yeah. But that one was
But
just pulled you in.
yeah, if you got Prime Video, watch that one. It's 100% worth it.
I do. So I
And
will.
they talk about the Beatles because they kind of came up in the Beatles shadows
Okay. Interesting.
because they're all from England.
Oh, okay. I can't believe how many bands. I mean, I don't know. This podcast has just really opened my eyes to so much. I love music, right? And it was such a general thing for me to say, like, oh, I love music. But the more people I interview and the more facts that people throw at me and the more I learn, like, I didn't think that my love for music could grow even more, but man, it sure has. And so I didn't realize how many groups came out of like Europe, Liverpool, that whole area, and then they came to America and got like huge and blew up. And it's just been such a mind-blowing, eye-opening journey that this podcast has brought me on and people that I've interviewed. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Well, I greatly appreciate you putting yourself in a place where you were willing to learn and you chose this format to interview people. I was actually telling my person before I got on the call with
Yeah.
you that I was doing this with you today, and she was like, "Okay, well, what's it about?" And I told her, kind of what your format is, and I'm like, I'm fascinated. I think this is an amazing way because no matter who you are, I think music's probably touched you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Everyone's got a song.
Well, and I would even say I have a lady that I interviewed, and she had said that, okay, you said music has touched everybody, right? She got to a point where she was so depressed or so in herself, right? That she could not listen to music because it's affected everybody. She actually had to take a break from it because for she said almost 10 years where she just couldn't listen to it because it would make her feel and she just didn't want to feel. And so
Mm,
I think it's interesting that yes, everybody has been touched by music, but then there's the flip side where some people just can't go there. They just can't they can't listen to it because they're just in a spot.
right.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that you can pretty much walk up and down the mall and say, "Hey, what's one of your favorite songs?"
Yeah.
And everyone would have an answer.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes. Well, you said that everybody has a song and everybody, and I think one of the things that comes up frequently is that it does transport you to this place and time. And I wanted to ask you earlier, when the song comes on, do you smell coffee?
Honestly, if I really think about it, I can.
Yeah.
Because that coffee shop, we would actually roast beans on site.
Oh gosh, it's such a good smell.
Oh, yeah, and if you've ever been in a place and smelled warm coffee beans roasting, there's just
Yes.
no substitute, and there was a lot of natural wood in the store, so,
Mm,
of course, that smell kind of permeated, so even on
yes.
days that just has a to this day, I walk in and I honestly don't know if it's my memory creating the smell that
Sure.
I'm smelling or if it just still smells like that, but that place is awesome.
And then it would be the ultimate trifecta if that song came on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, now
Oh,
now with, before I had to wait for it to come on the radio.
right, right. Well, talking about just the smell of roasting, I used to work for Chris Coffee
Yeah.
in Albany, and so I know that smell very, very well. But then we moved to Jacksonville, and actually downtown Jacksonville is where they roast Maxwell House. So
Oh.
sometimes when we go down for a Jags game, we'll be walking downtown, and I will like for a minute it will take me off guard, and I'm like, I know this smell, I know this smell, and then I'll be like, oh, Chris Coffee, and just I can remember coming down the drive, pulling in, parking, walking in, seeing everyone. It's such a great, I just love that so much. So I can appreciate the smell of coffee roasting. And I think that's cool that the wood, it naturally would absorb that
Yeah.
smell. So of course it kind of lingers for you guys.
I mean, you get back to Albany, we'll have to go get a cup there because,
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah, for sure. I love all the coffee shops I got to visit there. They were so like mom and pop and hippie boho and, or hobo, bohemian. Yeah, boho. Yeah, I just love the feel of all of them. And I love that they were not Starbucks and they were not down here. We have Bold Bean, and in Minnesota we had Caribou Coffee. And I just love that they're not chains, that they're just their own entities. So
I had Caribou down when I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. There were a couple of Caribou coffees, and I like their coffee there.
interesting. Yeah, if when I'm in Minnesota, that's my preference is Caribou for sure.
Yeah, I love the format of your show, and I am incredibly grateful to get an opportunity to be interviewed. This is awesome.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with me today, Peter. And I am looking forward to lots more coaching and This World Better Watch Out podcast land, because Virtual You is getting ready to blow up.
Yeah, and if you're a Virtual You fan, I would pay very, very close attention to some of the amazing things that I think Tiffany's got an opportunity to bring to the world and add value. And that's, it's why I do what I do. It's the smile on my face when I go to bed. It's why I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, is because I'm passionate about my big why, as you hear people say, is
Mm-hmm.
helping other people accomplish theirs.
Yeah.
And that's one of my big whys. And so I am incredibly excited. And Tiffany doesn't even know all the awesome things that are going to happen. So watch carefully, because this is going to be an awesome ride.
Well, thanks so much, Peter. And my audience, I hope this episode was music to your ears. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? You never know what rabbit holes we'll get to go down and explore. Were you reminded of anything? Or anyone? Share what it was with me in a review. Honestly, the reviews don't do me any favors other than knowing people like you are listening to this podcast. Insert cheesy wink. However, the ratings do help, so leave me 5 stars. You know you wanna. This podcast was produced by Virtual You, supporting you in all things podcasting. To connect or check me out on social media, I know you're just gonna stalk me. But see the show notes, as always, for details. Can't wait to dive into my next guest's memories with a beat. Hit subscribe now. You don't want to miss the next episode.